Hey everybody, this is Mike from Music City and welcome back to Ranking Records. Today we're going to continue on looking at live albums. I really enjoyed doing the previous version we did where we looked at classic rock albums, and we defined that as the breakup of the Beatles to the start of the Sex Pistols. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit, and this one's going to be from 1975 to 1980, and we're going to look at what I'm going to call 10 great albums of that era. And I know the Sex Pistols didn't start until after 75, but like I said, when I was putting the records together, I cheated a little bit. Like everybody else, really missing live music, so it's been fun to go back and explore a lot of live albums. So not a ranking here, we're going to do these chronologically, and I'm kind of sticking to things that came out, back in the relevant time period, because for the bands that were popular back then, a lot of things have been reissued, Record Store Day and, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to stick to stuff that came out back then. Now, we're going to start with something in 1975, and that's Bob Marley and the Wailers Live. Now, I love Bob Marley. I really, really regret never having seen him live, and I had my chance and I blew it. I used to go to a lot of shows at the Beacon Theater in New York City, and I remember when they played there and had a friend go, and he came back the next day in school and told me and described the scene to me, and it was really bizarre. I mean, back then, theaters in New York, you sit in your seat, the usher keeps you there. He said it was just total pandemonium, that everybody just went to the front of the stage, was crowding the aisles, and stood everywhere they wanted to do. They totally lost control, and he did say it was a pretty amazing show. Now, good record. The only problem that people had with this record at that time, it was only 7 songs, and did have No Woman, No Cry, I Shot the Sheriff, the big songs. But the good news is it has come out. I've discovered this and haven't picked up on this yet, but a couple of years ago, there's a 3 LP set of this, and it's recorded in London in 1975, and I'm definitely going to pick up that 3 record set. Great reggae for a rain day, and there's nobody who plays reggae better than Bob Marley, and this stuff sounds really good. Next, we're going to stick with 1975, and the next couple, the few of these records that we're going to look at here have an interesting saga to them that, I didn't recall during that era that many bands were putting out live albums as a regular part of their recording process, but what the record companies were doing back then was releasing a lot of live material as promo records. And it's funny because you look at these promo records, you never heard them on the radio. You wonder whatever happened to them, but collectors like us were always able to find them in the used record stores, where the DJs were selling their copies, so they became really, something for us to seek out and love and enjoy. And interesting that the 4 that I'm going to show you today that fit in that genre all were later released by either the record company or the artist themselves. So really some good stuff. Now the first is a performer who I just love, and that's Nils Lofgren. And this was called Back It Up, which was an authorized bootleg. The way I got this one was kind of interesting. I was a writer for my college newspaper, and somebody said, hey, call A&M Records. They're sending this record out to anybody who calls, and I'll never forget. I was in school in the cafeteria and went to a payphone. Those were the days long before cell phones, and I called A&M Records, and they sent it to me, and I reviewed it for my newspaper. I've really loved this record. I did get to see Nils live at the Bottom Line in this era, and he was fantastic. If you are familiar with Nils, he came before this. He had a band called Grin. He played with Neil Young. He's just an incredible guitar player. Some of his signature songs, Back It Up and Keith Don't Go, his ode to Keith Richards is on here. But to me, the standout track on this is a cover of his of the Carole King, Jerry Goffin classic, Going Back. And just listening to Nils play the piano intro to that, it's just beautiful. It's just really, really good. Check that one out. And I will be putting a Spotify playlist together for this, and I'm gonna, if this stuff is out there, we'll have that one. Nils, of course, today a member of the E Street Band with Bruce Springsteen, and this was at the time his debut solo record, where he kind of went from Grin and was recording as Nils Lofgren, which is also a really great album that you need to pick up, just called Lofgren. So that's 2 of the 10. Now, number 3, a little different twist, and this is a sort of a, well, it's a compilation of a really fantastic tour that happened in 1977 in England. Stiff Records, God, we need labels like Stiff. They just did so many great things, and they put together a package tour with their artists, and going from, I guess this is your right or left, I can't tell, but we've got Ian Dury, Reckless Eric, Elvis Costello, Nick Lowe, and Larry Wallace, sadly, who had just passed away, I believe, last year. But they did one of these crazy tours where they all played short sets, and this record is just a great document of that. You know, you get a couple of songs from each of the artists. There also was a video recorded of this tour that I believe you can find it out on Amazon and rent it and watch it, or buy it and maybe in a bootleg copy. I love watching it. The music performances are great. There's a lot of great chatter and talking on the bus, but when I watch it, I really wish I had subtitles. Sometimes the British accents get a little heavy. Now, here's my question to whoever's got the Stiff Records tapes. Come on, there's got to be a lot of recordings of that Be Stiff tour. Why can't we get a really nice box set of it? That would just be fantastic. So that's the third one of this 75 to 80 compilation. Now, here's one that I really didn't discover at the time and went back and found it and absolutely love it, and that's called It's Alive by the Ramones. This was a New Year's Eve show in London at the Rainbow. I did a little research reading about it, and apparently it was just all hell break loose. They tore out the seats of the show. But if you just like the Ramones like I do, or if you're kind of new to the band, this is a good way to start in, because they were just fantastic live. And this is really just, you know, really it's a Ramones greatest hits. And as fast as they played and as short as their songs were, I think there's like 90 songs on here. Well, no, there's about 30 or 35 songs on here. So a really good record to discover the Ramones. Oh, and I skipped over something I wanted to show you on the Nils Lofgren. Here is the CD that he released. He called it Bootleg, and he added a couple of tracks to it too. So definitely, I believe you can get this at Nils's website, or it wasn't very hard to find, but definitely pick that up on CD if you're interested. Now, the next one falls in that same category as an item that was released as a promo, and this is Elvis Costello live at the El Mocambo in Toronto. Interesting news, the El Mocambo is reopening. Really neat club. I've gotten to go there once in my life to see a Stiff artist, actually, Rachel Sweet. But, you know, this was Elvis's first tour. He did a lot of FM broadcasts on that tour. And the interesting thing about this, it came out as a promo item, and it was tricky to find. But it was bootlegged, so it was all over the place. And it was very hard to tell the bootleg from the original. I think... I'm not gonna. I used to remember how to tell the two apart, but it doesn't matter. I had the bootleg for a long time before I actually found this this real copy, which I even kept sealed. But again, Costello and the Attractions on fire back in 1977. Just a great, fantastic record. Now, as a lot of you know, I'm a big Elvis Costello fan, and I'm in all the Elvis Costello communities you could ever manage. And there's the story that all the Elvis people love to talk about is just one guy who just screams throughout the whole show, you know, like, whoa! And he's pretty annoying, so you'll notice that. But nonetheless, a great show. Now, a little bit of a sidebar, you know, as much as I'm an Elvis Costello fan, I'm also a big Nick Lowe fan. And Nick Lowe came out and joined them at the end of this show and did Heart of the City and maybe another song. And there's actually a 45 that came out, a promo 45 in Canada of Nick Lowe at the El Mocambo with the Attractions doing 2 songs, and it is extremely mega rare. I mean, you're looking at $500 every time one shows up on eBay, and I really haven't made the splurge for that yet. But again, a great record. And of course, like I mentioned before, it eventually came out on CD. The first time it came out was when they put out a box set of the, what did they call, 2.5 years, where they covered the first three Elvis Costello albums. They included this as a bonus, and it's been made available since. I think you can even buy it separate. but it's got the whole show, except for the Nick Lowe stuff that was on the vinyl. So again, you can pick that up on CD version. The next, another promo item. David Johansen Group live at the Bottom Line. Now, you know, background, you may know David Johansen was the lead singer in the New York Dolls, and he put out his first solo record in 1978 and went on a club tour. And in the Bottom Line, he played 5 nights, and I was very fortunate to go. It was just fantastic. I think David Johansen is one of the greatest live performers there is ever. You know, whether he's with the New York Dolls or David Johansen or Bustin' Poindexter or David Johansen and the Harry Smiths or whatever he's doing. We're going to do a David Johansen ranking records for sure at some point in time. But this was just a great, great document to me, of one of the greatest live bands. It's just raw rock and roll. He's just so entertaining and engaging and funny on stage. And you had a little bit of a Dolls reunion here. Sylvain was a member of the band, and Johnny Thunders, the late Johnny Thunders, comes out and makes a guest appearance. So I strongly recommend this. Again, I bought a friend of mine a vinyl copy of this for Christmas a few years ago. You can find that, but if you're a CD guy or you can't find that, it did get reissued on CD by, I think it was, well, I guess Epic actually, you know, who was his label at the time, actually released it. And it's an extended version. It's got 18 tracks. Just fantastic. I mean, that first David Johansen album is just a classic album, and it's the album that they were touring on here. Highly, highly recommend that, and this live album as well. The next one, continuing our trend of promo releases. And this was just a really, really cool one, and it was... Maybe back in the day, it cost about $20 or something, you know, which back in '79 was a lot of money. But Graham Parker and the Rumor had just put out, I think, their career-defining album, Squeezing Out Sparks. And this record came out, and it was called Live Sparks, which is a series of live performances of the 10 tracks that came off of the Squeezing Out Sparks album. I think, 2 venues. It was San Francisco and Chicago. Both were FM broadcasts, and they put the 10 songs from Squeezing Out Sparks, but they put 2 really, they put 2 really cool bonus tracks on there. One, which had been released by them as a single, and one was their cover of the Jackson 5's I Want You Back, which they called I Want You Back, parentheses, Alive, and also his ode to the label he was so happy to be away from, Mercury Records, and a great song called Mercury Poisoning. This band was on fire back then. They were just fantastic. Parker is still out there doing it today. See if you can pick this one up somewhere. Oh, and the song was called Mercury Poisoning. I may have failed to mention it. He left Mercury Records, and this actually came out on Arista. And what Graham Parker did a few years later on Arista, on a reissue of the Squeezing Out Sparks record, they did put the Live Sparks as a bonus on this. I'm trying to think, is it a separate disc? No, it's all, whoops, it all fits on the same disc. So again, really cool how these old promos from back in the day have gotten a new life. Okay, so we're still working through our 10, and probably the most famous live album that I'm going to cover today, and just because it's famous doesn't mean it wasn't great. Cheap Trick Live at Budokan. This is the album that really got this band on the charts. They were big in Japan, played the Budokan. This got released and just took off like a rocket. I Want You to Want Me was all over the radio, that live version. It's kind of unusual to have a live version become a radio hit, but it was. Maybe we got a little tired of that. We kind of heard it quite often, but still, just a great document of a band really, really playing at its best. And check this out. Remember these little promo strips on the bottom? I always loved buying promo records, especially ones that had the promo strips. You know, these are meant for the DJ so he can see the tracks, put a little check mark to the track he wants to play, and also show the time. You know, so if they were trying to prepare, you know, how much time he had to run to the restroom while he was spinning records on the air. And my little Cheap Trick side note is Tom Peterson, the original and current bass player for Cheap Trick, took a little hiatus, lives here in Nashville now, and I had the honor of meeting him in person recently, and just what a great guy, and what a great band still out there doing it today. So I'm sure you'll be able to see Cheap Trick somewhere this summer. We've got 2 more to go, and this one I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but I've long described Joe Ely as being the greatest live performer west of the Mississippi. Now, if you know me, you know who the greatest live performer east of the Mississippi is, of course, Mr. Springsteen. But that's the Joe Ely and the Joe Ely Band, their record Live Shots in 1980. I moved to San Antonio about this time and had the pleasure of seeing a lot of Joe Ely shows, and oh my God, just a fantastic, fantastic live performer. Still today, but back then they really were on fire. And just to give you an idea of how much respect and sort of how genre crossing Ely was, you may think of him as a country performer or whatever. On this record, he does a duet with Carlene Carter, who was living in London at the time, married to Nick Lowe. And I don't know if you know this, The Clash. I'm trying to think who from The Clash was there. There's some pictures inside. I think it was, let's see, who from The Clash was there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the pause. I can't delay, but here you can see the pictures up on the top of him playing with The Clash. And Clash, big Joe Ely fans. When I saw, no, I didn't. I don't think. Yeah, when I saw The Clash play in San Antonio, Joe Ely came out and joined the band. And throw a little record collecting trivia in here. This is the U.S. version when Purple, the U.K. version came out in red, and of course I had to have both of them. But check out Joe Ely if you don't know him. Just some fantastic stuff back in the day. Number 10. I almost forgot about this one, but I think my next ranking records is going to be on this artist, and that's just one of my favorite all-time artists, and probably, if you ask me, the artist who is no longer with us that I probably missed the most, that's Mr. Warren Zevon and his 1980 Live at the Roxy record. What did he call it? Stand in the Fire. Just a fantastic, fantastic record. I had seen Zevon in his very early days play at the Bottom Line when he toured off of his what's the record? It escapes me now, but the Asylum record, the one called Warren Zevon, and he played the Bottom Line, and he really was pretty sedate, just behind the piano and everything. But I don't know whether it was seeing Bruce Springsteen live or whatever, but he started standing up and he started becoming a very, very lively performer. As you can see, he's standing up on the cover. I actually did get to meet Warren Zevon once, and it was at a Bruce Springsteen concert, and sadly, he wasn't doing really well. He needed to sit down, and glad to know how his story worked out, that he did straighten himself out and really had a great second career. Sort of became more of a folky type performer, singer-songwriter, with playing solo with an acoustic guitar. But back in his band days, he had some of the best players in the business playing with him. And this is just a great live album. It includes a Springsteen song on there that he was the first to sort of it was an old Springsteen song that wasn't recorded called Jeannie Needs a Shooter that he does on here. And you've got Werewolves of London, Lawyers, Guns, and Money. Just a great, great live album. So that takes us through 10 great live albums from 1975 to 1980. And while we're in this current situation, we are missing live music. It's really great to give live music a listen on vinyl. And I want to thank you for spending time with me again. Please, if you like what you're seeing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll keep you in tune of what else we're doing. But this is Mike from Music City signing off. Have a good day.